would like to welcome everyone at this session. And even though we have a number of short presentations that will be shown throughout the session that were recorded, we tried to structure it in such a way that we can have as much interaction as possible. So please feel free to raise comments and suggestions in the chat while the presentations are shown, and to discuss your comments after each discussion. Well, my name is Dolly Dlavane. I'll be presenting this session with my colleague, Dr. Koti Kaisar. We are both lecturers in the School for Language Education, and we were part of a team that developed a short course on multilingual pedagogies for Northwest University lecturers last year in 2020. We have therefore been grappling with issues on how to effectively apply multilingual teaching strategies during lectures and to facilitate student learning. In today's showcasing session, different lecturers from Northwest University, our colleagues, and from universities in America will show their ideas and practices, and then we will have some time to discuss these.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Like Dr. Dlavane said, I'm Koti Kaiser, and I would also like to welcome on stage Dr. Hassana from Nelson Mandela University, who is also working in the field of multilingualism and who will share the stage with us today. Thank you, Dr. Hassana, for joining us. We are going to kick off the session by watching a presentation by Professor Nico van der Merwe, who is from the School of Accounting Sciences. And he and his colleagues will discuss how they are utilizing translated PowerPoint voiceovers as part of their accounting module.
I'm Nico van der Merwe. I am the coordinating program leader for the Chartered Accountancy program at the Northwest University's School of Accounting Sciences. And I would like to talk a bit about the background to our multilingual concept video project within the school. So this project was born from a perfect storm that occurred in 2018 when the NWU has just published its new revised language policy, and at the same time the South African Institute of Chartered Accountants, or SAICA for short, has also published their new language policy applicable to the qualifying examinations that prospective chartered accountants need to write in order to be admitted as SAICA members. Now, on the one hand, the NWU policy promotes education in 4 different languages, being English, Afrikaans, Setswana, and Sesotho. And the SAICA language policy cannot be more different from this, in that the requirement of the SAICA policy is that prospective CAs need to write their qualifying exams in English only, being seen as the language of business. Now, this resulted in a lot of discussion within the School of Accounting Sciences and the broader faculty, as well as with the DVC of Teaching and Learning and various committees of Senate. And ultimately it was decided that the 4th year of the CA program would be offered in English only, so as to best prepare students for the qualifying exams of SAICA, but the 3rd year of the program, in terms of formal lectures, would occur in English only. However, the instruction in English would be supported in a variety of ways in the 4 languages that the NWU promotes. And one of these ways would be the production of short concept videos in a variety of languages, so the students can listen to the concepts in their mother tongue in order to improve their understanding of the instruction that they received in English. And this is exactly how this project was born. The journey with our project up to this point has been very rewarding, but has not been without challenges. Initially in 2019, we started off by drawing up a project plan, identifying the staff to be involved, the budget of the resources that we would need, as well as timelines on when what needs to be done. We then had initial discussions and meetings within the school, and we decided that it would be the simplest and most efficient to just keep it simple and use PowerPoint with voiceovers. Fortunately, we have very creative staff members in the school that came up with a nice template that everybody could use including some background music, some introductory animations in the video, etc. We then, up to this point in 2020 semester 1, have produced more than 50 English and more than 50 Afrikaans concept videos. But when it came to the point where we needed to start translating some of these into Setswana and Sesotho, it wasn't initially that easy to obtain the buy-in of all the staff in the school, simply because it was initially felt that the Setswana and Sesotho videos might not be that beneficial for learning because of the fact that the students up to this point have learned and have been instructed in English in terms of the business and accounting terminology. And that includes business and accounting terminology taught at high school level. So the other reason also was the fact that even though business and accounting terminology exists in formal Setswana and Sesotho, it is not necessarily used in day-to-day speak. So we then actually decided that when producing the videos, we would keep the language informal and only use Setswana and Sesotho terminology that is used often. And where business and accounting terminology is not used often in day-to-day speak, we would rather than use the English terminology within the Setswana and Sesotho videos. And we did find that that works very well. We then made the pilot videos available to our students for a trial run, and we obtained their feedback. And I'm pleased to say that up to this point, we have an overwhelming majority of students that have indicated that if the videos were available for all the topics in all the subjects in Setswana and Sesotho, that they would have used that regularly for learning because it is very beneficial for their learning. So that's very positive feedback that we've received, and we will most definitely continue producing all the videos in the 4 languages of the NWU.
And don't say that you will pay input, because it's not possible. Input will be claimed and output will be paid. So at the end of the day, the vendor needs to reconcile the VAT position to determine what is the net VAT effect of all the supplies made by such vendor. So let's say that the only transaction that the vendor had in our scenario was this one single transaction. That means in the net of effect, you will say he had to pay over to SARS output tax of 30 Rand, while he was allowed originally to claim back 15 Rand input from SARS. So the net reconciling effect will be a VAT payable to SARS of 15 Rand. If we take a step back, let's consider what happened in the transaction. The vendor added 100% profit to the original cost price. And now he is taxed on all the value added to the product. The tax on the value that was added, we refer to as the value added tax. That's where the naming of that comes from. It's a tax on the value that you added to the product, which refers to value added tax. As ons 'n streekie teruggee en net weer die transaksie in geheel beskou, kan ons sien dat 100% wins was op die oorspronklike prys van R115 deur die ondernemer gehef toe hy die lewering van die goedere aan die kliënt gemaak het. So omdat waarde by die oorspronklike produk se prys gevoeg is, word daar nou 'n belasting op hierdie waarde gehef en dit noem ons die belasting op toegevoegde waarde. En dis waar die naam van die hele BTW ook vandaan kom, is belasting op toegevoegde waarde is 'n belasting op die waarde wat tot die produk toegevoeg is. So wat se waarde is tot die produk toegevoeg? In effek het ons gesê dit is R100. En wat is die BTW op R100? 100 maal met die BTW koers van 15% gee vir ons 'n BTW van R15. En dit is dan ook die netto effek van die BTW wat betaal word aan SARS as gevolg van R100 extra waarde.
Good day. My name is Joseph Shabela. I'm a senior lecturer in the School of Accounting Sciences, lecturing financial management and management accounting. I was recently involved in a project to translate the taxation videos into the Sotho language. This project meant a lot to me as I'm one of the students that come from the townships, where I did my basic education and higher education with Sotho as a first language. I believe this is the experience of most of our students, as many students in the Vaal campus have Sotho as their first language. Many students in the Mafikeng campus have got Setswana as their first language, and most of our students in the Potchefstroom campus have got Afrikaans as their first language. So really, English for most of us is actually a second language. Students find it easier to ask me questions in their mother tongue. They often come to my office asking me questions in Sotho, in Zulu or Xhosa, and I'm able to answer them in English or Sesotho. I find that students find it easy to articulate questions and express themselves in an easier way and in a way that I can understand when they speak their mother tongue. Now the project was done using informal Sotho because we needed to start somewhere. We believe that is the language that the students are speaking now, and since the students never spoke Sotho in accounting from their foundation phase, it's very difficult to just introduce formal language at this point. Hopefully in the future we'll be able to do more videos in a formal language manner. But we are very excited since the students have indicated that the videos that we've made are very useful to them, and we are looking forward to making many more videos to help facilitate learning for our students. Thank you.
Ha re transaction ena ya ho reka stock le ya ho rekisa ke tsona fela tse vendor e di entseng. Ho bolela hore ditlamorao tsa VAT tsa vendor e tla ba ho patala SARS R30 mme a dumelle ho claima input ho tswa ho SARS ya R15. Jwale ho bolela hore o tlameha ho patala R15 ho SARS ha o sheba transaction ka botlalo. Ha re kgutlela morao hanyane, re shebisisa hantle hore ho etsahetseng. Re bona hore vendor o edile kapa o kentse 100% profit ho cost ya hae jwale ka ha re ntse re buile. Jwale o taxuwa ho value a edileng. Ke ka ho tax ena e bitswa value added tax. O taxuwa value eo o e edileng. Ke tax ho value eo o e kentseng ho ntho tseo o di rekisang. Re edile R100.
Good day. I am Makabiso Mudisa-Difi, a senior lecturer at the School of Accounting Science at the Northwest University. I participated in the Setswana concept videos for financial accounting. My experience in making the sample concept videos is that I struggled in translating, especially the accounting terminologies. However, because we agreed on using the everyday language that we speak, I think through practice, commitment, and support from us as lecturers, translation will not be much of a challenge. I believe that this is going to be beneficial to our students because some students who didn't do English as their first language take time in understanding concept if only explained in English. This is further proved by students' responses after listening to our videos. They said that they understood concepts better now after they have listened to those concepts explained in their home language.
I think the video was cut a bit early, but the last part was a demonstration of how they now translated it into less formal Sesotho. And so it was the same topic, but now in Sesotho. And if we think about the whole process of scaffolding a language, I think what came through in this presentation was also the fact that the students aren't prepared for the formal academic discourse in the African language yet. So we need to go through that half pipe of discourse process, which we also talked about this morning, moving from formal academic discourse in English to simplified academic discourse, translanguaging. And it was so interesting with that lecturer who said that the students come to his office and he answers this isiZulu student and the isiXhosa student through means of Sesotho or English. So the translanguaging happens already, and then moving up. And this is now where the university is still struggling with the top down and the bottom up processes, getting to a point where we can get to not stop at translanguaging or even simplified academic discourse in the African language, but getting to a point where we can get to formal discourse in the African language, Fadal. I think this was a very interesting intervention and a project in the sense that we see that whole process, and it also takes us through the process of preparing staff members and students, creating awareness, and the fact that changes might not happen overnight. I don't know, Dr. Lavani, what do you think about this?
Dr. Kaiser, I do understand, and Prof. Alfred, Prof. Nico explained it right from the beginning, that they are currently using the communicative language, but not the academic language. Because when I listened to the recording, there is somewhere where the presenter, the other presenter says vendor A, or vendor O edile. Edile is added. And there is a Sesotho and Setswana word for that, which we can't say it's really, it's academic. And vendor, and the words, the transaction, input, value, so those concepts in Sesotho. It would be interesting to know what did they come up with, but as Prof. Nico has explained, and as you have rightly said right now, that currently there's a struggle between the bottom up, and it shows when we look at the pipe, our pipe that we presented this morning. The presentation is only at the Fadal stage. It's not yet at Sadei and Fadei, where it's academic African, academic Sesotho, and academic Setswana. So I'm seriously interested in seeing the lessons, applying, implementing, using the African languages terminologies, because here the university's policy, the new policy of the university is it's focusing on developing these languages. So this struggle between the Sadei and the Sadal, that flow, we really have to work on it in order to get the African languages to the level of academic, so that they can be engaged in academic discourse. That is all I can say. Dr. Kaiser, I don't know if you want to engage Dr. Hassana.
Thank you, Dr. Kaiser and Dr. Javane. I am of the view that if you want to develop our languages, yes, we will have some teething problems. We learn from those teething problems, but those teething problems are supposed to inform our theory, and the theory is supposed to inform the practice. And then we standardize what we have found working, and we use it. If we don't use our languages, they will never get to an academic status level. So to me, teething problems are necessary, and let us learn from this teething problem, and we record what works, and we record what doesn't work, and how can we reconfigure it to work, because languages has never been static. It has been on the run throughout, and the people who are supposed to develop the language are the speakers of that language. If we don't speak and use the language, it will always remain at the periphery. So I would advise that let us speak the language, let us coin the language, let us standardize that language, and when we use it, we move forward into adding new words in our dictionaries, in our ways of doing it, in our cognitive multilingual education. Because if we don't take it as cognitive, we only take it as communicative, we'll never get there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Hassana. And it also brings me back to the question this morning about our graduate attributes, because Prof. Yaku also mentioned that many of the faculties are in a position where they have to be accredited by external bodies, engineering, accounting, and these external bodies expect the learners to be functionally literate in English, because that is where they are tested and that is what the market expects from them. So I would love to hear from the audience. I see Molly also says it would be interesting to listen or to watch the translated video to Setswana or Sesotho. And we'll just check what happened with that video, Molly, and we can add it to the recorded session. I'm sure we can make a plan. But they actually demonstrate how it's been recorded, like Dr. Dolly said, Dr. Lavani said. But I think, again, it's this balancing act of thinking about the graduate attributes, what the world outside wants, what the economy wants, what the market wants, versus aiding students in their conceptualization of knowledge, in their acquisition of knowledge. And I agree with Dr. Hassana. We shouldn't stop at this point in the School of Accounting. Now, like she said, we should build theories. We should add terminology lists. We should add pedagogies that are really relevant to that specific faculty. And again, in that way, the bottom-up and top-down processes will meet. And yes, so I agree with you on that.
Can I add a question there to problematize the situation?
Yes.
When we're displaying our expertise, are we displaying our expertise using the language, or the language is a conduit to acquire the expertise? Because if you say the authorities want exams to be written in English, there are many countries which are world-class countries that are using their mother tongue. And when they go for business to other countries or other institutions, they will use the functional English. But when it comes to how to do something, they do it because they learn it through their mother tongue. So I see no reason why we always put, but they have to do it in English. Yet the Constitution says all South African languages are supposed to be used to access knowledge, to display knowledge, or to share knowledge, or to show whatever expertise you have.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Hassana.
Thank you, Dr. Koti. Can we move on with the next recording, please? The next recording is from the American colleagues at the University of Texas and at the City University of New York on how they utilize multilingual repertoires in their classes. We can watch the video as it is displayed to us. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Alisa Cavazos and I'm an associate professor of rhetoric and composition in the Department of Writing and Language Studies at the University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley. UTRGV is located in Deep South Texas along the Mexico-US border, and UTRGV aspires to become a bilingual, biliterate, and bicultural institution. At UTRGV, I have the opportunity to teach courses in writing and writing instruction at the undergraduate and graduate level. I teach these classes through a linguistically inclusive approach. We have conversations about language difference in our own experiences and history with writing in language. We have the opportunity to engage in conversations as we explore scholarly research on translanguaging, and we also have the opportunity to enact language difference in the things that we create and the things that we produce for different audiences and different purposes. In this video, I would like to share with you some of those strategies that I use in the classroom, and I also hope to pose some questions that you can explore and think about as you discuss after watching these videos. I have students in my class who self-identify in terms of being monolingual in English or multilingual or bilingual, knowing English and Spanish. And to different degrees, their linguistic abilities in either of those languages vary. And this linguistically nuanced and complex experiences with language from our students and for myself included provides us with rich opportunities to engage conversations about language and language difference and language perceptions and linguistic ideologies. So I always like to share with my students and my colleagues that I learned English as a second language, and I didn't always have the teachers who supported and who guided me in ways that I would have hoped. I do remember one teacher who vividly shared with me that it's an asset to know more than one language and that I should continue practicing and using Spanish. But throughout my education, this was the only teacher who ever indicated or showed any interest in my ability to read and write in another language. And I would say my ability to read and write in Spanish, in English, varies. It's my education, my higher education, my degrees were all in English. And I would consider my ability to read academic Spanish not as equal as my ability to read academic English. And by that I mean academic articles in English and in Spanish. But that doesn't mean that I don't engage in reading academic articles in Spanish. I do, and when I have found them to be quite fruitful, and they expand my knowledge and my ability to make meaning of what I'm reading and what I'm experiencing and engaging in different ways, in ways that I wouldn't have been able to do if I'm only reading and engaging in one language. And so I would like to share with you some of the strategies that I use in my classes to engage students in these conversations. One of those strategies is that I encourage students to analyze their language abilities as rhetorical resources. And by that I mean that I encourage students to reflect on their experiences with language and writing in different languages and in different contexts. So particularly we explore how have they used their different linguistic abilities in different contexts, and how have they navigated and negotiated their use of the linguistic difference for different purposes. And the purpose is to build awareness of our many linguistic strengths and how we can leverage them, or how we can transfer these linguistic abilities to different contexts. So even if I am asked to write an academic art paper or a biology report, for instance, in English, that doesn't mean that I'm not drawing on my knowledge and resources in Spanish to write that report. And so that this initial writing experience invites students to think about how do we actually draw on our linguistic abilities and how do we transfer them into different contexts. In other words, how do we use our full linguistic repertoire to achieve aims? And so one of the questions that I like to pose students, because it's one of the challenges that arises when we start having these conversations, is that how can we move away from language separation ideologies, which often prevent us from transferring our full linguistic abilities into other contexts. So we always tend to say, well, I use Spanish in this context, and this other context I only use English, instead of looking at how do we draw on our full linguistic repertoire in both of those instances, in order to truly and fully embrace our linguistic resources as a whole. Second, I like to provide students with examples of language difference in multiple contexts, both in academic context and in our community. And I do this because I want students to really identify how do we navigate and negotiate languages for different audiences and different purposes. The most important part of this exercise is that I invite students to bring their own examples to class to share with each other. So they do that through perhaps personal interviews or observations in the community, particularly nonprofit community organizations in our region, primary documents such as social media posts, ads, brochures within our community. And then we analyze these examples. How are people engaging their full linguistic repertoire as a whole to convey meaning and to simultaneously draw on their linguistic resources in these contexts? And we take a deep dive into analyzing these examples. One of the questions that arise and one of the challenges in our conversations is how can we challenge language correctness or standard language expectations or English-only ideologies or Spanish-only ideologies, particularly when standard language might be the expectation but may not necessarily align with the goals for that particular context. So perhaps we have the expectation that we read something in standard American English or standard Spanish, for example. However, that language may not have the impact that we intended it to have in our community for the specific audience we're trying to reach. So it defeats the purpose of using a standard language expectation or a monolingual linguistic ideology. And so we try to challenge that and analyze that. How can we challenge that in these examples? And I invite you to think about that as well. How do we move past these social expectations of language correctness? Finally, I invite students to compose in diverse languages and discourses for different audiences. And one way to address the question that I just posed on language correctness is to design assignments and activities and projects that push our students and to push ourselves, right, as multilingual users of language, right, to move past these linguistic monolingual expectations. And that is to design assignments that have meaning and that are authentic and that have real impact in our communities. And so a lot of that also requires us to co-design and co-create with our students in order for them to gather and use their full linguistic repertoire. A question I'd like to pose to students is how can we draw on our full linguistic abilities to connect with others for specific academic or community-based contexts? What challenges might we face when we do try to use other languages or engage in translanguaging in these instances? And how can we do that in such a way that that allows us to be inclusive of different languages beyond my class, beyond my course that invites that use, and into other courses that maybe the professor may not be too receptive to that idea. And so I invite students to think about that alongside with me so we can create more linguistically inclusive spaces together. I wish I was there with you. I hope you found these short examples meaningful. I look forward to learning more about what you all discuss and engage. And please don't hesitate to reach out to me if you have any questions or concerns and as you engage with each other in your space. I look forward to learning more. And my email is Alyssa, ALYSSA.Cavazos, CAVAZOS, @utrgv.edu. Feel free to reach out anytime. Take care.
Hi, my name is Lucy McNair, and I am Associate Professor of English at LaGuardia Community College, part of the City University of New York, where I teach academic and creative writing. I'm a trained translator and scholar of North African indigenous literature and film, and I've always sought to bring a multilingual lens into my writing pedagogy. For the past 2 years, I've joined my colleague here, Lee Garrison Fletcher, in co-leading an interdisciplinary faculty seminar, Language Across the Curriculum, which we call LAC. And we wish to talk to you about it today.
Yes, hello. So I'm Lee Garrison Fletcher, and I'm an associate professor of linguistics and ESL at LaGuardia. I teach linguistics courses and academic ESL in the Department of Education and Language Acquisition. My research interests focus on language acquisition and literacy development, particularly among adolescents and adults, and the importance of building on learners' language backgrounds in this process. So we're delighted to have been invited to share our experiences with you today. So I'm going to start by giving you just a little bit of context about where we teach. So LaGuardia Community College, which is part of the City University of New York, as Lucy said, or CUNY. And CUNY is the largest urban university system in the United States. LaGuardia Community College is one of 7 community colleges that are part of CUNY. Like all CUNY schools, LaGuardia is located in New York City. It is located specifically in the borough of Queens, which is arguably the most ethnically diverse urban area in the world. LaGuardia serves around 36,000 students, with about 19,000 enrolled in degree-seeking programs. And the diversity of Queens is, of course, mirrored in that of our LaGuardia students. We have students from around 150 different countries, and our students speak around 100 different languages.
So since 2010, LaGuardia has gradually shifted resources away from remedial and ESL education to what we call accelerated learning. And this integrates academically novice students and emergent bilinguals in mainstream credit-bearing courses while providing them with extra support. So today, most incoming students who need to develop academic skills to succeed at college take these accelerated composition and math courses where they meet 3 extra hours in a small group with their professors. In addition, since 2019, CUNY has done away with an entrance exam for most incoming students in favor of looking at evidence of previous academic achievement. So looking at their high school grade average, maybe they took SAT scores, their TOEFL scores. This double shift has brought changes in the demographics of our classrooms. They've brought more emergent bilinguals directly into credit-bearing courses, as well as more multilingual students who struggle with academic standards of American English.
Being an institute of higher education in the United States, English is the dominant language at LaGuardia. While our linguistic landscape has smatterings of other languages, the vast majority is in English. And with such a mismatch between the landscape and our students, we saw the need to raise language awareness of our community, especially given the demographic shifts that Lucy just mentioned. So we have been providing the professional development, LAC, that Lucy also mentioned before, through our Center for Teaching and Learning. And this workshop we offer for faculty and staff across the campus with the aim of promoting multilingualism as an asset and implementing more inclusive pedagogy that is multilingual, that questions the hegemony of English in our institute, and that emphasizes the need for all instructors to focus on language in their classes. So in addressing one of the questions posed by the organizers of this panel, the question, how is multilingual pedagogy different from mere translation of content? I'd like to focus on language ideologies. In the United States, the dominant view has been that multilingual students have a deficit, that they need English. This is in contrast to the view that multilingualism is an asset. It's an essential learning tool that students have, and it's an advantage to be multilingual, not a problem that needs to be fixed. Multilingual pedagogy embraces multilingualism, sees it as an asset, and uses it as part of the educational tool. On the other hand, if we think of just translating content in order to make the course content accessible for those who lack English proficiency, this is part of the deficit view. So multilingual pedagogy really requires a valuing of multilingualism. It's not just a way to get to English. Another question was about how instructors can use translanguaging, can use multilingual pedagogy in their classes if they don't know the languages of their students. This question comes up very often in our LAC workshops because it's common at LaGuardia to have students from at least 5 different language backgrounds in every class. So it's essential that we can implement this multilingual pedagogy without knowing all the languages of our students. So one thing that is very important to think about is that we'll have to give up some of our control. When students from the same language background are working together, speaking and using a language the instructor doesn't know, often they think, well, how can I be sure that they're talking about course content? And the answer is, we can't know that. We have to give them the benefit of the doubt. But really, how much do we know about what students are talking about when they're working in groups, even if they are speaking in English, right? Also, we can encourage our students to use multilingual resources and provide them these resources, even if we don't know the language. For instance, something as simple as encouraging students to use bilingual dictionaries or allowing them to use a translation app on their phone can go a long way in promoting multilingualism and encouraging students to view their languages as useful tools that belong in classrooms. So I'm just going to share a brief strategy that I use when I teach academic ESL, which is essentially an English writing course. So I start off this semester and I assign the first homework to students, asking them to write anything they like from 1 paragraph to 1 page in any language that they like. Many students don't really understand and take me up on the offer to bring in languages other than English. But some do. And then the next class, we have a discussion in English about writing. We talk about what is writing, why do we write, and students reflect on how they approached their homework assignment. Students share in groups what they wrote. If students wrote in the same language, then they can read each other's writing, or they can explain in English what they wrote about to other students. So I do this in order to set the tone in the class as being open to other languages, to counter the idea that writing is only in English, and to continue to invite students to bring in their language resources throughout the semester.
So a big question for us is, what does LAC mean for students? How do they experience this shift? When faculty know more about language ideologies, about language acquisition and bilingualism, and about the linguistic landscape of our college, they can more quickly invite students to identify and value their language skills and make informed choices. In turn, students can begin to ask why they use or don't use their resources and what they want to do in the future. So take English-Spanish bilingualism. We are a Hispanic serving community college, and about 60% of our students identify as Latino, Latina, with varying degrees of competency and literacy in Spanish. Many faculty and staff speak Spanish fluently as well. Until now, the common belief has been to avoid using Spanish in order to promote fluency in English, viewed as the avenue to success. So meaning well, the college has reinforced a common and extremely prevalent language stigma to the detriment of all, failing to recognize English-Spanish bilingualism as an asset and a skill. So LAC fundamentally questions this ideological position and educational myth and invites students, faculty, and staff to rethink and reuse their bilingualism to learn and collaborate. So it really questions how we're navigating on campus with our languages. But LaGuardians as a whole are fundamentally multilingual, as Lee has explained, and adept at moving between several languages. So to link to the issue she addressed above, how translation works in the LAC context, I want to share what I do in one of my classes. I teach a composition course on the theme of lost and found in translation that invites students to reflect on their linguistic repertoires and skills as interpreters, as we read and analyze a whole variety of texts on the subject and the theory of translation. And we learn about the fallacy of equivalency between languages, how each translation is really an act of interpretation and negotiation. And this leads us to the core of academic inquiry. You know, how do we understand each other? How can we be accurate? How do we go between points of view? Students are surprised to find out that they have expertise in these kinds of negotiations, since they have translanguaged since they were kids, and that these skills are valued in academic and business contexts. The choice is then theirs. What do they want to do with their language skills? Do they want to add to them? Do they want to correct them? Or do they want to transform them? So to sum it up, LAC seeks to constructively disrupt the status quo on how we perceive and talk about language, as our colleague Dr. Kate Mencken has put it. Lee and I wish to thank Rosemary Wildsmith and our contact here, Andrea Parmigiani, for their invitation to join you today.
Yes, thank you. And we hope that this brief overview of our work here in New York connects with your work and your concerns. And we look forward to more exchange.
We've watched the international colleagues, and maybe we should give Dr. Hassana opportunity to comment on the maybe the similarities and the differences, what he has picked up from the presentation of the international colleagues. Dr. Hassana.
Thank you, Dr. Levane. I think what I've underlined was the use of tools to accelerate language development and use, because the last colleague, that is Prof. McNair, talked about literacy development, which is, I think it's Prof. Lay, literacy development, which is central to language development. And if you can't have a repertoire of literary genres and literacies, multi-literacies, our languages will never develop and grow and be used. So I underlined the use of literary translation and also the use of literacy development in coming up with all the elements that are core in multilingual education. He also identified language ideologies. To me, I want to align language ideologies with language identities and how those can be fused together to develop the language without losing out who you are, your language, and your cultural repertoire that comes with language learning and teaching. So I think those were very central to me. And also, I think that the social approach to multilingual or to language learning is central. That leads to cognitive multilingualism. So those were the traits to me that were golden in all the approaches that we need to look at, so that we see to it that we don't leave our students behind in the journey of making them understand English, because it is not English only whereby you can access knowledge and even international knowledge. You can access international knowledge in other languages if you allow your students to even use the tools to access. So I always ask my students to use Google Translate, and I always laugh because that tool on its own is not complete. because when it comes to African languages, concord are very important, and also word order is very important. So you'll find out even that the translator is kind of borrowing from all these English and African or Africans words, or even other European words. Yet there are African languages terminologies. So I think it means we as African language speakers, we have to be hands-on in coming up with these tools of developing languages, especially technological. To me, I think technological will be the way to go, whereby you access the great knowledge from the speakers of the languages, and then you capture them in media or technology, and then they can stay there as an output, which output can be hard copy or technological copy. So I think that was my take in the discussion.
Thank you, Dr. Hassana. Yes, you have it very right. And I'm looking at our time and also checking the chat. I see a comment from Carmen Duplessis. Says, as soon as we start to normalize multilingualism, I think more people will be cognizant of the advantages thereof. At this stage, it is normal and obviously easier to make use of one lingua franca, as that was
Oh goodness, it seems like we lost Dr.
Dr.
Lavani. She said she might have some connectivity problems. Thank you, Carmen. That was, so no one thought about the implications, and that one lingua franca can and will eventually threaten indigenous languages. And I think that's also the point that Dr. Hassana made earlier today in our first session in the morning. But we live and we learn, like you say, there's always hope. And I hope that the multilingual pedagogies will play a positive part in the preservation of all indigenous languages, as well as encouraging multilingualism. Thank you for that, Carmen. I agree with you. I think we should continue to learn and follow this process through. We shouldn't give up. Okay, so now we are going on to our next recording, and we'll see how Mrs. Erika Potgieter from the Vaal campus used translation and student facilitation to scaffold assessment in her mathematics classes. She demonstrated part of that in our session this morning, but now we can hear it from beginning to end again for those people who couldn't attend her session. So we're looking forward to that recording now.
Hello everyone, my name is Erika Potgieter and I'm a lecturer in mathematics education at the Vaal Triangle campus. My teaching context is nested within a Sesotho environment, and although Vaal campus is an English campus, students welcome the following changes in my teaching learning approaches as a lecturer in my respective mathematics intermediate phase modules. As a Vygotskian scholar, I chose my strategies according to a socio-constructivist perspective. Students had to collaborate with me to delve into multilingual pedagogies. After all, we're in this together. I tended to place the ball in the students' court and work proactively with them to create the following experiences. Hi colleagues, I would like to talk to you about the following. Weaving of a golden thread, where I integrated multilingual pedagogies into intermediate phase mathematics. My modus operandi consisted of these 7 points: the appointment of 2 mentors, the guidelines I provided for my mentors, the introduction of these mentors to their peers in my flagship module, WhatsApp and Google Translate integration, other resources that I used and downloaded, assessment opportunities I provided my students, and my personal favorite, a terminology list that my students had to compile. So the appointment of 2 mentors, I got the idea, where I appointed 2 mentors that are both strong Sesotho speakers and mathematicians, and they were identified and elected by their peers. The guidelines for my mentors was a clear-cut document as to how they are to provide support. These mentors made short videos introducing themselves and setting the scene towards their role, which they shared with their peers on a WhatsApp group. A separate WhatsApp group was created for all Sesotho students to join, where the mentors shared these personal videos, creating a sense of common ground with their peers. I was also on this WhatsApp group and shared exchanges in Sesotho with the students. Google Translate assisted me there. I noticed that Google Translate worked well with simple phrases, not too content-laden sentences. I checked these exchanges and ran them by the two mentors at the beginning to ensure I was on the right track when explaining certain concepts. The students used the Sesotho platform not too frequently, and I was starting to second guess whether they felt comfortable with me on the group, being able to understand somewhat of what they were saying. Although they always commended me on my tries, I think they might have communicated more on this platform without me being there. My main idea to join this platform was for support and to ensure that discussions was mathematics related and not merely a chat room. Concerning other resources, I downloaded a Sesotho language manual as well as a multilingual mathematics dictionary as compiled by the Departments of Arts and Culture. For assessment opportunities, with the help of these two mentors and a student assistant at the Maths and Stats Centre on the Vaal campus, I was able to compile a Sesotho class test which was offered to students in Afrikaans and English as well. Unfortunately, this test was never written formally as lockdown struck and we had to move to an online approach. Another assessment opportunity was the integration of mathematical language into the designing of a coming attractions movie poster, which students had the options to create in their mother tongue, Sesotho, Afrikaans, or English. Unfortunately, no submissions in Sesotho were received. Concerning a terminology list, one of the tasks in my flagship module was where students had to compile a terminology list for mathematics in Afrikaans, English, and Sesotho via Google Sheets concerning a mathematical concept. They also had to write their own definition, provide a drawing or image related to this concept, which really broadened their scope concerning definition.
Thank you. We're lucky that Erika is here in our session this afternoon as well. So please feel free to chat and ask questions. Erika, thank you very much. She was, like I said this morning as well, this was very courageous in a time when we suddenly had to move to online teaching as well. She was very brave, and she also touched on one of the most contentious issues, which is assessment and the use of multiple languages in assessment, and something that we're also struggling and talking about at university level. What should translations look like? How should papers be presented to students? And I think these bottom-up approaches from lecturers will definitely inform, hopefully, the policy that will be come from the top down in the end, so that the two will meet one another. So Erika, I commend you for your courage and for your perseverance in doing this. And like you said, the students participated, and amidst all the changes and the online teaching, you created a space where they participated, where they brought their multilingual repertoires to the mathematics classroom. So we can see that it's definitely possible. Karabu says, thank you for informative demonstration presentation, Ms. Erika. Very creative and innovative, Erika. So I think colleagues, we should have more of these sessions where colleagues can showcase what they are doing. Dr. Lavani, I don't know whether you want to comment on something?
No, thank you very much, Dr. Kaiser. We can move to the next recording. Who is that? To be followed by Danielle. It's recording.
Yes, so next up is Mrs. Danelle Creer, and
Yeah,
she will
yes.
discuss how she used the Google Suite and Mentimeter in her business studies classes. So now we have another context, and how she used online resources to promote multilingualism.
Good day, everyone. I'm Danelle Creer, and in this video, I want to share teaching and learning multilingual pedagogies, the journey of learning with and from our students. Now, in this video, I firstly want to start off with some personal background information, the multilingual pedagogies that I employed, a quick demonstration of this strategy, student responses, and then some ideas I have for the future. Now I completed my undergraduate and postgraduate degrees at the Northwest University and was then offered the opportunity to teach in a poor school in Klabulugang location called Revenue West Secondary School. Now, in this poor under-resourced school, I realized that this is a context of many South African schools with learners that are hungry to learn, but also faced with the challenge of a language barrier. When I started teaching at the Northwest University in 2013, I was immersed in a multicultural and multilingual environment, and I really set out to collaborate with my colleagues at other universities as well as with the DBE, and I came to celebrate differences and diversity. So my current teaching context, I'm teaching contact and ODL students. I'm team teaching with my colleagues on other campuses. As you can see, this image right here is members of my school and colleagues. And I'm also, since this year, teaching across campuses. So teaching students on the Potch campus and the Vaal campus, and continuing with ODL. So what I really appreciate is that I have multilingual colleagues and students. So this is an extract right here of a Google Slides where I had an icebreaker activity with my students where we got to know each other and some characteristics that we share, and my students indicated that they are multilingual and are proficient in more than 3 languages. So this is really a great asset that we have in our students at NWU. So my multilingual strategy included being student-centered, having an integrated pedagogy, using online learning applications, and focusing on collaborative learning. So I wanted my multilingual pedagogies to be student-centered. So I realized I'm not multilingual, I'm merely bilingual. So I became the student and I learned a lot from my student teachers. Then my pedagogy was integrated and infused in my teaching. This wasn't an add-on to what we are doing, but it was really infused in the content, and I wanted my students to see what multilingualism can do for them and for their future learners. And in business studies, fortunately, we had a study unit that focused on inclusivity and diversity, and here multilingualism fits in perfectly. So the online learning applications that I chose included Telegram, Mentimeter, Google Docs, as well as Google Slides. And the focus was on collaborative learning. So I really wanted my students to realize that they are my partners in this journey and that I need them for this project to be successful. So due to my cross-campus teaching, I was able to appoint a supplementary instructor on the Vaal campus as well, and he's multilingual, and he aided a lot in making this project a success. So a quick demonstration, I'm going to show how my learning occurred from 2020 when I started in face-to-face teaching of the first-year students, then an online teaching in 2020 in the second semester, and what I'm doing currently with my third-year students. So I started off with my first years, and after a session, I asked them on Mentimeter to type in a concept that they struggle to understand. So Mentimeter built a word cloud, and this biggest, the concept that you can see right here is the concept or the term that was typed in or provided by the majority of students. So this is the concept that they didn't understand. But unfortunately, due to emergency remote online teaching, I didn't continue with this, but I continued with my third years. And I learned my lessons and I really involved them on Telegram to give some announcements, giving them some background in the project, and then posting the Telegram or the Mentimeter link on Telegram, asking them to identify concepts after each study unit because it was self-paced, and then also celebrating different languages when they completed their assessment. So as you can see with the Mentimeter response for the third years, not as many students participated, but the aim was to use these concepts and then build a Google Docs. So have the concepts in English, the definition, and then the other official languages of the other campuses at the NWU. Then I learned my lessons from last year. So this year I focused on involving my students, asking them to become my partners. Without them, this is not possible. This is just an extract of the announcement on eFundi. So then I requested that they build on this word list that was created on Google Sheets. And I also posted an announcement on Telegram to involve them, and also a poll here to keep them accountable. So I opted to use Google Sheets because I realized that students are proficient in more than those 3 languages, and Google Sheets offered the opportunity to include languages and to include concepts that students struggle with. My SI added or supported in creating the key concepts for each study unit, also referring to the word list of the DBE for business studies. So as you can see, the term, the definition for each of these languages, and then for each study unit has a separate sheet. So my student response, I learned from the first years, they were overwhelmed by the university and overwhelmed by the concept, multilingual pedagogies. And in the classes, it was difficult to maintain classroom management where they shared their different understanding of the different definitions of the concepts, and I wasn't able to verify their explanations because I found it difficult to recruit multilingual supplementary instructors from my students, my senior students. So I put it on us and took what I can to build on, to learn from. So for the third years and the second semester, unfortunately, we had a lack of personal contact. I tried to give a better introduction to the nature of multilingual pedagogies and the value that it has, but unfortunately, there was poor participation in Mentimeter and the Google Docs, as this didn't contribute to their module mark, so students didn't have an incentive to participate. But I did what I could and continue to learn. So this semester, I'm teaching across campuses. So I have supplementary instructors on the Potch and the Vaal campus who are bilingual and multilingual. And I combined my whole student group from the Potch campus, the Vaal campus, and ODL students. And here we have a big group of students that are multilingual with different backgrounds. I also moved to Google Sheets, and I wanted to involve my students with regular announcements and reminders to contribute to this word list. So interesting, I thought that the official languages will be completed first, but how enlightening it is to see that isiZulu was the concepts that have already been completed. So ideas for the future that I have in terms of multilingual pedagogies, we are in the middle of the second semester, so hopefully by the end of the second semester, this word list will be complete and it will be used by teachers to come in the future. But I think that we can integrate multilingual pedagogies in formal assessments and even have students across campuses work together in groups and really learning from each other. I also think that we can collaborate with our colleagues on the different campuses, have everyone buy into this project and teach each other and learn from each other, since we are already aligned in terms of the content. Then I can also lie hands with my colleagues on the BCom faculty that have similar projects, as well as members from the DVE, where they have diagnostic reports and they've identified difficult concepts that teachers need to focus on in their classes. And then finally, I want to see more student agency, where we have multilingual superheroes that can aid in this process and can support each other. Colleagues, thank you for listening, and I look forward to collaborating and communicating with you during the Language Awareness Week.
Thank you, Danielle, for the recording. Fortunately, Danielle is here with Ms. Danielle Kruger is here with us this afternoon, and she touched on assessment in multilingualism, and I want us to engage both Ms. Danielle Kruger and Ms. Erika Potgieter with regards to assessment. It will be interesting to hear from them what type, because they are using these strategies, multilingualism, multilingual strategies. What about assessment? How does their assessment come, or what strategies are they using? Maybe I should give Mrs. Erika Potgieter first to respond to the question, what strategies do you use, or how do you go about the assessment in your classes? Because of course the teaching and learning, the teaching will be followed by the assessment.
Erika? I
Erika?
think we'll have to invite her to the stage. I don't think she can answer.
It's too much. Okay.
Erica is not currently online.
Oh, it's not on. Okay. So,
both Erika and Danielle are not here at the moment.
Oh,
Danielle
okay.
isn't here either.
Oh, okay. I thought Danielle is here. You know, I got confused with my network that cut it off. But let me mention that assessment is one area of teaching that will be obviously affected by the multilingual strategies, because in assessment, the language that is used in class should also be used in assessment, because there is no point of assessing students on the language in which you did not teach the content. So the teaching and the assessment always go hand in glove. I hope Dr. Kaiser will agree with me on that one. And if you want to add something, you can add, Dr. Kaiser.
Yes, and I think we are still trying out, like Dr. Hassana said, we are trying out different ideas, different strategies. And to me, that is, I have so much respect for Danielle, because when I approached her to submit her recording, she told me, but I have nothing to say because so very few of my strategies worked. And I told her, but that is part of our research, and what you have to share is extremely valuable, so that people can learn from this. And to me, again, her perseverance in believing in the value of multilingual pedagogies, and if something's not working, you adapt it and you try it again. And she has now really stipulated 3 semesters worth of work, and finally those word lists are paying off now. But it has taken 3 semesters for her to work through this with her students, to create awareness, to learn from the way that she should approach the students. And she has continued with that. And I think it's also important that we share what didn't work with one another. So often we only share best practices, but we should share the process so that we can learn from one another. So to me, I have a lot of respect for her perseverance and for her resilience in changing and adapting to a point where the students can now benefit. What you said in terms of the assessment and what she also noted is students are still very much mark driven. So if we do not award a mark for a specific activity, they very often don't even perform that activity. And as part of the language policy, we marks for these. We want to incorporate multilingualism in the classroom, and we want to, encourage the students to do that. But we don't want to do it in a behaviorist way. But now with the students, they are so conditioned in some instances that if it doesn't count for marks, they just don't spend time on it because they can't see the value of it. The only value are those assignments that are being awarded a mark or a percentage.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Kaiser. Dr. Hassana is still with us. She's not cut it off by the by the weather. Dr. Hassana, do you want to comment on that? On the
yes,
issue of
assessment. Okay. I think also because Erica also touched technology. Technology is enhancing everything, but it needs us to know the how and the what and when to use it. I was happy that he talked about all the Google Slides and Google Docs and Google Sheets and the Mentimeters, because we need to introduce that to our students. And I know for the fact that our students, they run with technology and they can come back and teach us other things we never explored. So I think I'll copy his, her approach to my students, because with me, I was more on other technologies, and also it assisted me to design my programs before COVID came in, to use flipped classrooms and flipped learning approach, or flipped classroom approach. If you don't have a know-how of technology and the best practice out there to bring into the classroom after they have sat all by themselves wherever they are, listen, read, respond, and come up with a better solution. By the time you come into the classroom, you have a repertoire of different ways of knowing, of doing, or even innovating what was in front of us, because you have given them the chance to play around with technology, to listen to what that was taught in that video or clip. And then you allow them the time to critically think about it, innovate, or come up with some different ways of doing this, of knowing this. Then that on its own is teaching. So I am happy with what she has introduced in terms of the Google Slides, Google sites, as well as docs, all the how to technology. But now, the how to assessment is also very important, because I have a challenge right now. You give a student an assignment. If it's not in English, you won't be able to test for plagiarism. But if it's in African languages, how do you know that this was not taken from 2004 assignment and just taken as it is and put into the assignment of today? So I think that as well need to be looked at as what are the better ways of searching plagiarism in African languages, because you don't have that tool. Secondly, I think it's easy to me to come up with assignments in different languages. But as Dr. Javana has indicated, and I have indicated before, what you teach in the classroom must be something that you give your student assessment on. You can't assess things you never taught in their language, then you want them to write in their home language when they have to respond to an assessment. That approach is only there to assess understanding, not to be assessed in your own language, because you were not taught in your own language. You lack the vocabulary of that content subject. You lack grammatical competence of that content subject. So if you want that, make it a point that even the lesson you're teaching are taught in African languages, then it will be easy to set those questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hassana. You know, the issue of assessment, it looks like it's a very complicated or complex matter, because we had a discussion about assessment at the Committee of Senate's Language Policy, where we talked about the technicalities and the appearance of the question paper, to say whether the question paper should have both languages on the same side, two sides, or on the same line, to have English and Setswana, to have English this side, Setswana that side. So with assessment, with multilingual assessment, there are complexities which need to be still investigated and be researched, so that come the implementation of full implementation of multilingualism, then colleagues understand these complexities of multilingual pedagogies, because it is not just a matter of giving the question, providing the question in English, and then on the other hand in Setswana. Where we are now, I think we can move on to Dr. Kaiser.
Okay. We're moving on to Ms. Chantal Creer's presentation. Early in the week, we had a session on language portraits and how these are quite useful in making students aware of their own and others' language repertoires. This morning, Ms. Chantal Creer also had a session in our earlier discussion, where she discussed how she used language portraits in her own research, and she talk to us again about the value of language portraits.
I regard a language portrait as a visual representation that represents my language repertoire in a very abstract, unique, and creative way. A language portrait is an artifact that gives researchers insight into why, when, and with whom I use language, what a particular language actually means to me, how language makes me feel, and why I use certain languages. Completing a language portrait is not only fun, but it is also a very, very satisfying process, because it helped me critically think and reflect on my language repertoire in terms of the languages that I know very well, the ones that I do not know very well, and even those languages that I aspire to learn. During the process of completing the language portrait, many thoughts, ideas, and personal opinions about language were revealed in a way that I did not really think of before. My language portrait does not only consist of all the languages that I think I know very well, but also those that I can only greet friends, colleagues, or even strangers in. It even includes those languages that I can only sing songs in. Yet, those languages mean quite a lot to me. By making use of different colors that represent all the different languages that I know and placing them onto the silhouette, allowed me to visualize my emotions, feelings, and opinions towards all these languages that I ironically could not comprehensively describe in words. Completing a language portrait is a unique experience that allows for reflection and appreciation for all the languages that you know and aspire to know.
And Chantal is here with us today. And I see we had a whole side conversation about the technology that can be used, and the report that Alma has posted, Dr. Alma Marie has posted a link there for a report, a digital report that is compiled each year per country. And it gives an indication of what people use, how they use it, and what their access is to technology. And she uses that to decide which technology to use with her students. So I think that link might be helpful to other people in this session as well. And as Dr. Hassana said, we have to embrace technology and, meet, like Alma also said in a previous, we have to meet our students where they are in technology and move from there. So thank you for that side conversation and for the helpful link there, Alma. Then getting to Chantal's presentation, I don't know how many of you attended this session on language portraits on Monday or this morning's session with Chantal, but it is, as Chantal says, using those language portraits can go a long way in creating awareness among our students. And last year, at the NWU, most of the first year students completed language portraits across all 3 campuses. I think also the UODL students, I'm not sure about that. But the first year students all completed these language portraits. And it was amazing to see how much more aware these students were of the fact that they are bringing certain language repertoires to their own learning, and the fact that they could talk about that. They were just more aware of that. And it started with the fact that they completed those language questionnaires at the beginning of the year as part of their orientation at the university. Chantal, I don't know whether you want to add anything in the chat box, or do you want to come to stage to add something? I saw her previously. I don't know whether she's still here. Chantal, are you still here? No, Chantal is gone as well. Oi, oh, there she is. There she is. Chantal, are you with us on stage? Wonderful. There we go. You're just muted.
Chantal. I did unmute. Sorry, I did unmute and then Askies. But I am here. Now, I was just thinking that it is actually very interesting, the language portraits. We know that there are limitations. We know that there are many other things that we can do with them. But I think when we collected all those, I think it was like 3,000. No, I don't think 30,000 first year, so I don't know. 3,000 portraits, I think it was. Just to actually be in the venue with them, talking to the students, I actually also realized that they are so multilingual, and sometimes I'm very oblivious. I'm honest. I don't know what languages they know. For example, some of them come with German, others come with Dutch, others even come with other, maybe Portuguese or Greek, and then I don't always know about these languages, and even the African languages as well. So yeah, it was just very interesting. I think if we are more aware of that, then we can also try to move a bit forward, with other maybe methodologies to try and just up the awareness on campuses and things like that. So yeah, I'm very excited about the language portraits. I can talk a lot about them, but I know that there is a lot of room for improvement as well. So yes.
Thank you, Chantal. Dr. Hassana, would you like to comment on this?
I think he's already commented earlier on.
Using language portraits, because that's how you come to understand your students, where they come from, and then you can meet them halfway. And then if you have ways offering the subject in their mother tongue, you can. Fortunately, in the Eastern Cape, the languages that are dominant are Afrikaans, English, and isiXhosa. And when I was young, I was among other speakers of other languages. Like in my area location, there were Jews, there were Chinese, there were African speakers. So when I was young, it was easy for me to pick up the languages, and they were also picking up isiXhosa as well. So that's why, to me, multilingualism is practical and it can happen, because if you are immersed in that environment and you pick up that language every day, the input of that language is easily transferred to output, because you're always having this comprehensible input all the time. So it can happen. So that's why I like, as a result, when I couldn't join, I think during the week after she has spoken about these portraits, I was worried because I felt there is something else that I'm missing, because I use that every beginning of the year when I want to know my students, who they are and where they come from in terms of language diversity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Hassana.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're moving to our last
Recording.
recording.
Yes. That is Professor from Theology, Professor Alfred Bransford, who is going to share an idea on developing terminology from the bottom up in the Faculty of Theology.
Good day, colleagues. My name is Alfred Bransden, and I'm the Faculty Coordinator for Teaching and Learning in the Faculty of Theology. The Faculty of Theology has got a footprint across all three campuses and also a strong presence in the open distance learning environment. As such, we provide theological education to students from a wide range of cultures and therefore only a wide range of languages. The Faculty of Theology adopted their own language plan based on the language plan of the Northwest University, and we go about our strategy to reach the vision and the goal of multilingualism. We implemented a strategy that includes a number of phases. We thought it would be good to first start by simply sensitizing our students and staff for this whole matter, the important matter of multilingualism, the fact that there are indeed a number of languages represented among our students and also our staff, and then move on to a compilation of a glossary of terms, academic terms in theology, that we can use in our study material and later on in the assessment. And that would also be the third phase of our strategy, that we start to rework our academic material by also incorporating academic terms from different languages like Setswana and Sotho, which is represented strongly at our faculty. And then our ideal would be that we will also come into a position where we can make our assessments available to students in more than just English, Afrikaans, but also include Setswana and Sotho to start with. We decided on a language competition for our students as a very important part of reaching our goal and our strategy. And we have made this available a month or so ago, and most of our lecturers, or at least lecturers from all of the different subject groups, or most of them, bought into this, and they've provided a list of academic terms which we asked our students to take part in this by translating these terms into Setswana and Sotho. At the time of the Language Awareness Week and this recording, we are not sure yet how the students responded. Early indications are that not as many as we hope would responded and took part, but that also leads one to think from a critical and maybe an academic perspective that we would need to engage our students and staff more on this very important issue, because developing newer languages also into academic languages, that is quite a challenge, and maybe we need to engage more on this as well. But at least I think we made a good start, and we took steps in the right direction to embrace this very, very important issue in the higher learning, higher education environment. And I'm also thankful for a project like this, the Language Awareness Week, where I think which I think goes a long way in making us sensitive for this very important matter. So I wish you all well from the side of theology, all our colleagues, and I hope that you all have developed good narratives in this whole process about accommodating more languages also in your own faculty. Thank you very much.
It's so interesting to see how the different faculties are implementing the language policy in different ways. And when we look at the Faculty of Economic and Management Sciences and the way that they dealt with PowerPoint voiceovers, and now the Faculty of Theology, first starting with the terminology, and what Professor Brunson also said in terms of getting student buy-in, even if it is a competition, the students are still hesitant to take part because it's a different perspective. It's almost a different paradigm that they're not used to, and the students are unsure. I also see in the chat box, thank you, Johan, about the language portraits that Professor Susan Coetzee van der Roy and Mr. Leroux Malan in their session, they also mentioned that they're in the process of developing an app where people can complete language portraits online or on mobile devices. And like Chantal also said, that would make the data collection and data capturing much easier. So we're looking forward to that as well. Yeah, so I think to me, just watching all of these videos today, seeing we have one policy, but there are so many different opportunities for faculties and for staff, individual staff within the faculties, to apply that policy in a way that would be fit for their specific context. And I've learned so much by just listening and looking at what worked for other people and thinking about how we could apply that in our own faculty and in my own teaching. Dr. Hassana, would you like to add anything here? I think we might have lost Dr. Hassana. Oh,
No. I'm here. I have learned a lot as well, especially on language development and use, because without that element, we will not be able to reach our multilingual education goal. And also seeing that your university is forging forward in coming up with new apps, because without these technological applications, there's no way we can be activist in all these areas of language development. So I am for technology as the tool to advance language development and use, and to advance multilingual education. So I am kind of thumbing up your university for coming up with also this app for a language portrait. And I know for the fact that you also have the Sadila there, which makes me very jealous, because I've been pushing this Sadila on my side at Nelson Mandela. And unfortunately, it's still a long way to get there. So I'm very jealous in a very productive manner, because you learn from what you have developed and use your expertise to move it forward. Thank you.
Thank you. And I also, in one of the previous recordings, Danelle talked about multilingual superheroes, and may we create and may we become lecturers who are multilingual superheroes, and may we help and enable students to become multilingual superheroes.
Sure. And we can learn a lot from our students. Our students are great quick learners when it comes to technology.
Dr. Glavani?
Thank you so much, Dr. Kaiser. I think we have come to the end of our session, and I would like to thank Dr. Kaiser and everyone who took part in the session, and all the attendees, and thank you more to Dr. Kaiser for co-preparing and co-presenting this session with me. I would also like to give a special thanks to Dr. Hassana from Nelson Mandela University for joining us and sharing her expertise on multilingual pedagogies. I know for sure that you have a module in honors that focuses on multilingual pedagogies. And I'm happy to hear that you have also learned something from our colleagues here. And our Northwest 3 lecturers, Mrs. Erika Potgieter, Mrs. Danielle Kruger, and Mrs. Chantel Kruger, who shared their multilingual strategies with us. Our word of thanks goes to Prof. Alfred as well, who was not able to join us, but provided us with his recording to share what he is doing with his student in far as multilingual strategies are concerned. And as Dr. Kaiser indicated this morning, these academics implemented these strategies last year amidst the challenges that were presented by the COVID-19 pandemic and the online teaching, which most of us were not really ready for it. We really are in awe of their perseverance, creativity, and resilience. I want to thank Dr. Elma Mar. Thanks to her, because he helped with the editing and uploading and of videos, and this was not a child's play, I must say. Thank you very much, Dr. Elma, and to Miss Jackie Bonello and her team from Millennium. Your patience and professional technical support is highly appreciated. And just to remind you that there is a related session scheduled for Friday tomorrow at 10 o'clock on the International Batonde project, which will touch on the similar issues of this session, but with a more global perspective. And you are welcome to register for that session on the NWU website. Without much to say, I thank you all and goodbye.
Thank you, colleagues. Bye.